They will talk about you when you fail. They will talk about you when you succeed. They will talk about you when you do nothing. And they will talk about you when you do everything. So the real question is, why do you give so much power to voices that never stop talking? Every day, millions of people live trapped in invisible chains, chains not made of steel, but of opinions. Chains that weigh heavier than iron because they live inside the mind. Someone posts a picture online and deletes it 5 minutes later because they didn't get enough likes. Someone doesn't speak up in a meeting even though they have the best idea because they're afraid of being judged. Someone hides their true passion because they fear the laughter of their family or the whispers of their friends. This is the silent prison most people live in, the prison of what other people think. People's opinions are like the wind. They are constantly changing direction and never stay steady for long. One moment, people may admire you. The next, they may criticize you. And often the shift happens without you even changing anything about yourself. The truth is that what people think of you rarely has anything to do with who you really are. It has everything to do with the lens they are looking through. That lens is made of their upbringing, their insecurities, their fears, and their personal experiences. When someone says something negative about you, it is more of a reflection of what is going on inside of them than an accurate picture of your worth. Yet most people take these unstable, ever-changing opinions and allow them to dictate their emotions, their confidence, and even their life choices. Imagine building your entire life based on the unpredictable moods of others. One day they say you are smart, so you feel proud. The next day they say you are foolish, so you feel small. It becomes a roller coaster of emotions where you are never truly in control. This is why caring too much about what others think becomes so dangerous. You give away your power to people who don't even have a stable opinion of themselves, let alone of you. When you step back and really observe, you'll notice that most people are not even thinking about you as much as you imagine. Human beings are naturally self-centered. They are caught up in their own worries, their own goals, their own image. Even when they judge you, that judgment quickly fades because they are soon back to worrying about themselves. This means that much of the energy you spend on trying to manage their perception is wasted. You stress about how you looked, what you said, how you acted, but the truth is those details vanish from their memory almost immediately. Even the harshest words spoken about you usually dissolve as quickly as they were said. Yet the damage comes from you holding on to them, replaying them, and making them mean more than they actually do. When you truly realize that opinions are unstable and that they say more about the thinker than the subject, you start to detach from them. Instead of taking them as truth, you begin to see them for what they are, passing projections. One person might think you are bold and courageous, while another thinks you are arrogant. The same action, two completely different interpretations. Which one is true? Neither. They are just perspectives filtered through different minds. If you were to chase validation from both, you would exhaust yourself trying to fit two opposite molds. This is the trap that so many fall into. They want to please everyone, but everyone's expectations contradict each other. The result is a watered-down version of yourself that satisfies no one and leaves you feeling empty. The freedom comes when you realize that opinions are not fixed truths. They are just fleeting judgments that carry no real weight unless you give it to them. Living for approval is like walking through life with invisible shackles tied around your ankles. You may not see the chains, but you feel them in every decision you hesitate to make, every dream you hold back from pursuing, and every word you silence before it leaves your mouth. Approval seeking is a prison. And what makes it so destructive is that most people do not even realize they are locked inside. From a young age, we are conditioned to crave acceptance. Parents reward behavior that makes them proud. Teachers praise us for fitting into the mold. Society applauds when we follow the crowd. Slowly, without noticing, we tie our self-worth to the nods and smiles of others. It feels good when people like us, but the moment they frown, we shrink. The highs and lows of approval become addictive, and we end up chasing validation like oxygen. The problem with this pursuit is that it keeps you from ever knowing who you really are. Instead of living by your own compass, you constantly check the compass of others to decide your direction. You choose careers not because they fulfill you, but because they impress. You buy things not because you love them, but because they gain attention. You silence your truth not because it is wrong, but because you fear it might upset someone. Over time, the weight of these compromises becomes unbearable, and you lose connection with your authentic self. It is the perfect recipe for regret, because the life you are living is not truly yours. It is a performance for an audience whose applause will never be consistent or permanent. This prison is especially cruel because no matter how hard you try, approval is never guaranteed. Pleasing one group may upset another, satisfying your family may disappoint your friends, doing what society expects may crush your own soul. You bend, you twist, you contort yourself into different versions to avoid disapproval. But in the end, you realize that someone will always find fault. The irony is that in trying so hard to avoid judgment, you only invite more of it. Because people sense when you are not standing in your truth. They sense the insecurity and they exploit it. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes without realizing. The greatest tragedy of approval seeking is the dreams it kills. People with talent, ideas, and potential never share them because they fear ridicule. They stay silent when their voice could make a difference. They stay stuck in mediocrity when they could rise to excellence. And all of it stems from the fear of what others might think. This is why approval seeking is a prison far worse than any physical one. A physical prison locks your body, but the prison of opinions locks your spirit. Until you recognize that your worth is not determined by applause or criticism, you will remain trapped in a cycle where freedom is always just out of reach. Freedom begins when you decide that your own values matter more than anyone's opinions. Most people live in reaction to the world, adjusting their behavior to fit what others want or expect from them, but that leaves them constantly pulled in different directions. One day they act in a way that pleases their family. The next, they change themselves to fit in with friends, and then at work, they wear another mask altogether. This endless shifting may keep temporary harmony with others, but it creates inner chaos. You never feel fully at peace because deep down you know you are betraying yourself. The moment you shift your focus inward and start aligning every decision with your own values, the noise of outside opinions begins to lose its power. When you are guided by your values, life becomes clearer. If honesty is your value, you speak the truth regardless of whether others like it. If growth is your value, you pursue opportunities even if people around you think they are risky. If kindness is your value, you show compassion even when it is not popular. In each situation, the approval or disapproval of others becomes secondary because your anchor is internal, not external. This is why people who are deeply grounded in their values radiate confidence. They are not swayed by trends, gossip, or criticism. They walk a steady path because they know why they are walking it. The beauty of aligning with values is that it also protects you from regret. Many people wake up years later realizing they spent their lives living for others and feel a deep emptiness inside. They realize they followed paths that were never truly theirs. But when you live by your values, even mistakes become meaningful because they were made in pursuit of your own truth, not someone else's expectation. That kind of life may not always be easy, but it will always be authentic. Another powerful effect of focusing on your values is the freedom it gives you from comparison. People compare themselves endlessly. Who has more success, more money, more recognition? But comparison is rooted in other people's standards. When you measure yourself against your own values, comparison fades away. You no longer ask, am I doing better than them? You ask, am I living in integrity with myself? That question leads to fulfillment instead of jealousy, peace instead of pressure. The world will always offer you endless opinions about how you should live, what you should do, and who you should become. If you listen to all of them, you will drown in noise. But when you stay centered on your own values, you rise above the noise. People may still talk, but their voices no longer carry the same weight. You hear them, but you are not controlled by them. You measure your worth by the standard of your own heart, and that is the kind of freedom no external judgment can ever take away. Every person who has ever achieved something extraordinary has faced the sting of criticism. It is impossible to do anything significant without attracting judgment, because by definition, greatness sets you apart. The moment you step away from the crowd and pursue your own path, you challenge the comfort zones of others. Some will misunderstand you, some will envy you, and some will openly mock you. That is not a sign that you are wrong. It is evidence that you are on a path worth walking. History proves this over and over again. Inventors, leaders, artists, and visionaries were all doubted and ridiculed before they were respected. At first, their boldness was seen as arrogance, their ideas were seen as foolishness, and their determination was seen as stubbornness. Yet their refusal to bow to opinions is exactly what allowed them to make an impact that outlived the voices of their critics. Criticism is not the enemy of greatness, it is a companion to it. If you are never criticized, it usually means you are blending in so well that no one notices you. But blending in never creates change. The world does not remember those who kept everyone comfortable. It remembers those who dared to be uncomfortable themselves. If you spend your life trying to avoid criticism, you will spend your life avoiding growth, because progress demands that you break patterns, and broken patterns always trigger resistance. The truth is, people criticize not because you are wrong, but because your courage exposes their fear. Your action highlights their inaction. Your boldness highlights their hesitation. And instead of facing their own reflection, it is easier for them to attack you. The key is to understand that criticism is part of the journey, not proof that you should stop. The voices may be loud, but they cannot determine your outcome unless you hand them the power. Every insult can either be taken as a wound or transformed into fuel. Every doubt spoken over you can either shrink your spirit or strengthen your resolve. The difference lies in where you place your focus. Those who achieve greatness choose to see criticism as confirmation that they are making waves. They understand that a calm sea produces no waves, and a life lived quietly in the background produces no opposition. But the moment you step into your purpose, you disturb the waters and waves will come. You cannot control what others say, but you can control whether their words stop you. If you let criticism paralyze you, you will remain stuck where you are. But if you let it sharpen you, if you let it build your resilience, you become unstoppable. Every time you face criticism and keep moving, you grow stronger. Every time you rise above mockery and keep building, you build a foundation no storm can shake. The truth is that greatness was never meant to be easy, and criticism was never meant to be avoided. It was meant to be endured, overcome, and used as a stepping stone toward becoming everything you were created to be. One of the most powerful shifts you can make in life is learning the difference between feedback and opinion. On the surface, they may look the same because both involve people expressing their thoughts about you, but their intent and their impact are completely different. Feedback is constructive. It comes from a place of wanting to help you grow, improve, or refine what you are doing. Opinion, on the other hand, is often rooted in personal bias, insecurity, or preference, and it seeks to shape you into what someone else thinks you should be. If you do not learn to separate the two, you risk either ignoring valuable guidance or being controlled by meaningless noise. Feedback is specific and actionable. It might point out an area you can work on and offer insight into how you can improve. It adds value to your journey because it sharpens your skills and makes you better equipped to handle challenges. For example, a mentor telling you that your presentation would be stronger if you slowed down and used more pauses is feedback. It is not meant to tear you down. It is meant to build you up. Opinion, however, is vague and often critical without direction. Someone saying they simply didn't like your presentation because it wasn't their style is an opinion. It reflects their personal taste more than it reflects the quality of your work. If you confuse the two, you may abandon your path because of an opinion that carried no real weight in the first place. The reason this distinction is so important is because opinions are endless and often contradictory. One person may tell you to take more risks while another tells you to play it safe. One person may call you bold while another calls you reckless. If you try to mold yourself to every opinion, you will twist into so many shapes that you lose all sense of who you are. But feedback, even when it is hard to hear, is usually aligned with your growth. It may challenge you, but it challenges you in the direction of improvement rather than conformity. Another key aspect of feedback is that it usually comes from people who have walked the path before you or who genuinely care about your progress. They see your potential and want to help refine it. Opinions, on the other hand, often come from people who have little understanding of your journey or who project their own limitations onto you. When you stop giving opinions the same weight as feedback, you reclaim your focus. You are no longer tossed around by random voices. Instead, you filter what you hear through the lens of growth. Every successful person has learned how to filter. They take in what helps them and discard the rest. They are not arrogant or unwilling to learn, but they are wise enough to know that not every voice deserves authority over their path. When you adopt this mindset, you become free. Free to grow from feedback, free to ignore opinions, and free to walk forward with clarity rather than confusion. Courage is not something that appears overnight in a grand moment of glory. It is something that is built slowly through small, consistent acts of choosing yourself over the fear of judgment. Every time you decide to act in alignment with your truth, even when it feels uncomfortable, you are laying another brick in the foundation of your confidence. People often wait for courage to arrive before they take action, but in reality, courage is created by action. It grows each time you step into a moment that scares you and refuse to let the fear of opinion stop you. The first time you speak up in a room where you normally stay silent, your voice may shake, but the fact that you spoke strengthens you. The first time you share your dream with someone who might not understand, you may feel exposed, but the act of sharing makes you bolder. These small moments accumulate. And over time, they transform you. What once felt impossible eventually becomes natural, not because the world stopped judging you, but because you stop caring as much about being judged. It is a muscle you train, and just like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. At first, lifting even the lightest weight feels difficult, but with consistency, the weight that once felt impossible now feels easy. Courage works the same way. The opinions that once paralyzed you lose their grip because you have trained yourself to keep moving regardless of them. The beauty of this process is that it does not require perfection. It only requires repetition. You do not need to silence every fear or ignore every judgment instantly. You only need to take one small step, then another, and then another. Over time, those small acts compound into an unshakable inner strength. Eventually, you will look back and realize that the situations that once terrified you no longer faze you, because you have built a reservoir of courage too deep for shallow opinions to drain. Another truth about courage is that it inspires others. When you act boldly despite criticism, you give silent permission for others to do the same. People watch and see someone living freely, and it sparks something in them. They may not say it out loud, but your courage becomes a mirror showing them what is possible if they stop caring about judgment. This ripple effect means that your personal growth has a wider impact than you might ever know. Most people never experience this kind of transformation because they wait for the fear to vanish before they act, but fear never fully disappears. The difference is that courageous people act even with the fear present. They understand that opinions will always exist, but those opinions lose their control when you refuse to bow to them. Each small step, each small choice to honor yourself builds a shield around your spirit. Over time, that shield becomes so strong that no criticism, no judgment, and no rejection can pierce it. This is how courage grows, not in a single leap, but in the steady rhythm of choosing authenticity over approval again and again.